The applause was still echoing off the glass walls when Marcus said it. And thanks to my leadership on this deal. My fingers tightened around the contract so hard the edge bit into my palm. My name wasn't said. Not once. I was standing right there, 3 feet from him, heart still racing from the close. The client's signature still fresh. My ears rang, not from the clapping, but from the sound of my work being erased in real time. I looked around the room, waiting for someone to correct it. No one did. Marcus kept talking, his voice smooth and confident. He gestured toward the projector screen where my presentation slides were still displayed. My analysis, my risk assessment, my negotiation framework. He pointed at them like they were his ideas. The executives nodded, impressed. Someone patted his shoulder. Another asked about his strategy for phase 2. I felt my chest tighten. Not from anger yet. From disbelief. From the sudden understanding that I'd been naive to think the truth mattered more than optics. The client representative, Mr. Brennan, caught my eye across the table. His expression shifted slightly. He'd been there for every call, every revision, every late-night problem-solving session. He knew. But he said nothing either. 5 minutes later, the clapping stopped. HR stepped in like they'd been waiting just outside the door. Marcus didn't look at me. He stared at the table, hands folded, voice smooth. This isn't about performance. The words hit before my brain caught up. We're going in a different direction. The contract was still in my hand when he fired me. I remember thinking how ridiculous that was. The ink hadn't even dried. The celebration champagne was still fizzing in glasses across the conference table. And here was Valerie from HR. Her practiced sympathetic expression firmly in place, sliding a folder across the table toward me. Your severance package, she said quietly. 2 weeks. Standard terms. 2 weeks for 18 months of work. Marcus finally looked up. I'm sure you understand. Nothing personal. Just business restructuring. Business restructuring. The phrase companies use when they mean, we're getting rid of you but don't want a lawsuit. I stared at the folder. At the contracts still clutched in my other hand. At the executives filing out of the room, already forgetting I existed. Who's taking over the implementation? Yes. Marcus blinked. I'll handle the transition myself. I remember the sound of the HVAC kicking on. I remember the faint buzz of my phone vibrating in my pocket. I remember how calm his voice was. I don't remember standing up. But suddenly I was on my feet, heart pounding so hard it felt violent, staring at the same man who had shaken my hand 10 minutes earlier and whispered, We did it. We didn't do anything. I did. Every cold call to Brennan's office. Every revision of the proposal after their team pushed back. Every weekend I spent building financial models while Marcus was at golf tournaments, posting pictures on company Slack about networking. I traced their supply chain vulnerabilities. I'd identified the exact pain points their current vendor was creating. I'd built a custom implementation timeline that addressed their board's specific concerns about disruption during their Q4 rush. Marcus had shown up to exactly 4 meetings. He'd spent 3 of them checking his phone. And now he was taking credit, taking my deal, and taking my job. All in the same breath. Valerie cleared her throat. Natalie, if you could just sign. No. The word came out harder than I intended. That was the sentence looping in my head as I walked out of the conference room. Not yelled. Not dramatic. Just quiet. Surgical. Public. Like I was being cut out of the picture while the frame was still warm. I didn't sign anything. I told Valerie I'd review it with an attorney. Her professional mask cracked just slightly. Surprise, maybe concern. Marcus shifted in his chair but said nothing. Picked up my notebook. My pen. Left the severance folder on the table. The hallway outside was empty now. Everyone had scattered back to their desks, probably already crafting congratulatory emails to Marcus. The deal of the year. His crowning achievement. Except it wasn't his. And somewhere in my chest, beneath the shock and anger, a small voice was getting louder. They don't know what they just did. Because Marcus didn't understand the deal. He'd never read the full contract terms. Never sat through the technical requirements meetings. Never mapped the dependencies between their legacy systems and our platform. He knew the headline. $4.2 million, 18-month contract, biggest client acquisition in company history. But he didn't know how it worked. My name is Natalie Cross. And I had just lost the job I built my life around, after delivering the biggest deal that company had closed in over a decade. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. He nodded. I smiled once. What? And then the past came rushing back. I thought about the night I joined this company. 26 years old, fresh out of business school, drowning in student loans. The recruiter had sold me on opportunity for growth and merit-based advancement. I believed it. I'd worked 70-hour weeks for 3 years. Closed deals other reps wouldn't touch. Learned the technical side of the product until I could debug integration issues alongside the engineers. I'd made Marcus look good for 18 months straight. And my reward was a severance package I hadn't signed. The elevator doors opened. I stepped in, pressed the button for the parking garage. Watched the doors close on the office I'd thought was my future. My phone vibrated again. Pulled it out. 3 texts from Brennan. Call me. Natalie, we need to talk. Please don't ignore this. I stared at them as the elevator descended. 20 floors. 18. My finger hovered over his contact. Then I pressed call. 6 months earlier, this deal landed on the table like a dead weight. Too complicated. Too risky. Too demanding. Everyone passed. I didn't. The request for proposal came through on a Friday afternoon. Most of the sales team was already heading out for happy hour. I stayed late, reading through Brennan's requirements. His company, Halcyon Industries, was a mid-sized manufacturing firm trying to modernize. They needed a complete overhaul of their supply chain management system. Integration with legacy equipment. Real-time tracking. Predictive maintenance algorithms. It was a nightmare scope. Our platform could technically do it, but it would require heavy customization. The implementation timeline would be tight. The risk of failure was high. And if it failed publicly, it would damage our reputation with every other manufacturing client we wanted to pursue. Marcus had glanced at it and said, "Pass. Not worth the headache." The other senior reps agreed. I took it home that weekend. Read every page. Started sketching out how we could actually deliver what Brennan wanted. By Sunday night I had a framework. By Monday morning, I'd requested a call with Halcyon directly. Marcus hadn't even noticed. The client didn't want slides. They wanted answers. So I stayed late. Called early. I told the truth when the company preferred spin. When things broke I didn't hide, I fixed them. Slowly the client stopped asking for anyone else. Brennan's technical director, a sharp woman named Olivia, had tested me hard in the first meeting. Threw out questions about API limitations, data migration risks, downtime windows during deployment. I didn't have all the answers. But I didn't pretend I did. "I don't know," I'd said. "But I'll find out by tomorrow." And I did. Every question she asked I answered. Every concern she raised I addressed. When our platform had legitimate limitations I said so, and proposed workarounds. Trust built slowly. Call by call. Email by email. By month 3, Brennan was CCing me on internal planning documents, asking my opinion on budget allocation, treating me less like a vendor and more like a strategic partner. Marcus started paying attention then. He inserted himself into meetings, started speaking first, positioning himself as the relationship owner. But whenever Brennan or Olivia had real questions, they directed them at me. It made Marcus visibly uncomfortable. My manager noticed. He started interrupting me in meetings, correcting details he didn't understand, smiling while doing it. I learned to pause, let him finish, then quietly restate the truth. It made him angry. The pattern became predictable. I present something technical. Marcus would jump in with a clarification that was either wrong or irrelevant. I'd wait 3 beats, then gently redirect back to accuracy. Actually, what Marcus means is, became my most used phrase. Brennan noticed. I could see it in how he'd glance between us, confusion flickering across his face. Why was my manager contradicting me? Why did I keep correcting him? Olivia was less subtle. After one particularly awkward call where Marcus had confidently stated we could deploy in 4 weeks, when the actual timeline was 12, she'd sent me a private message. Is he always like this? I'd stared at that message for 5 full minutes before typing back. He's learning the technical side. Diplomatic. Professional. Lie. After that, Olivia started scheduling technical deep dives with just me. No Marcus. No other sales reps. Just me and their engineering team, working through real problems. Those meetings became the foundation of the deal. A coworker leaned in one day and whispered, "He doesn't like when people look essential." I laughed it off. I thought results protected you. Her name was Kennedy. She'd been at the company for 6 years, survived 3 restructurings. We'd grabbed coffee in the break room, and she'd watched me finish another call with Halcyon. "You're doing great work," she said. "Thanks. But be careful." I looked up from my laptop. Careful of what? Kennedy glanced toward Marcus's office. He has a pattern. When someone on his team starts building too much direct client relationship, starts looking like the irreplaceable person, he finds a way to reset that dynamic. Reset how? Reassignment. Sudden project shifts. Sometimes termination, framed as performance issues. She stirred her coffee slowly. I've seen it 3 times. I wanted to argue. To say that this was different, that the results would speak for themselves, that Marcus needed me to close this deal. But Kennedy's expression stopped me. She wasn't being dramatic. She was being honest. "Just document everything," she said. "Every email, every deliverable. Protect yourself." He nodded. I should have listened harder. Closing day. The room was electric. The client shook my hand and said, "We trusted you." I believed stupidly that meant something. Brennan had flown in with Olivia and 2 members of their executive team. The contract had been negotiated down to the final clauses. Legal had signed off. Finance had approved. All that remained was signatures. I'd prepared a brief overview of the implementation roadmap. 20 slides, covering deployment phases, success metrics, communication protocols. Marcus had tried to take the presentation that morning. "I'll handle this," he'd said, reaching for my laptop. "I've got it," I'd replied, keeping my voice even. His jaw tightened. But with Brennan already in the building, he'd backed off. The presentation went perfectly. Brennan asked smart questions. I answered them. Olivia raised one last concern about data security during migration. I walked her through our encryption protocols and third-party audit results. By the end, they were nodding. "This is exactly what we needed," Brennan said. He signed first. Then his CFO. Then Olivia, grinning. The room erupted in applause. I felt relief flood through me. Months of work. Validated. Then Marcus stood up. In the executive recap, my manager reframed everything. We decided. I directed. My strategy. I watched my name dissolve. And then HR walked in. He spoke for 8 minutes straight. How we had identified Halcyon as a strategic target. How our approach had focused on relationship building. How my leadership had guided the negotiation through multiple obstacles. Every achievement I'd fought for became his. Every late night, every revision, every client conversation, rewritten with him at the center. The executives ate it up. Course they did. Marcus was one of them. Same golf courses. Same MBA network. Same effortless confidence. I was just the worker bee who'd executed his vision. Except I'd created the vision. I'd built the strategy. I'd earned the trust. Brennan's face grew increasingly blank as Marcus talked. Olivia looked down at her phone. The CFO glanced at me once, confused. They knew. But corporate hierarchy is a powerful thing. And in that room, Marcus's title carried more weight than my truth. When he finished, someone asked, "So what's next?" "I'll be personally overseeing the implementation," Marcus said smoothly. That's when HR walked in. Restructuring. Alignment. Not personal. The words stacked neatly while my future collapsed. I didn't argue. I asked one question. Valerie had clearly rehearsed her script. She used terms like strategic reallocation and organizational efficiency. She explained how my role was being consolidated into a broader team structure. Translation. Marcus wanted me gone before I could become more valuable than him. The severance folder sat between us like evidence of my expendability. 2 weeks' pay. Standard NDA. Release of all claims. Sign here. Walk away quietly. Disappear. I looked at Marcus. His face was carefully neutral, but I caught something in his eyes. Not guilt. Calculation. He was already moving on, already planning how to tell this story to the executive team. How removing me was somehow strategic. "Who's managing the timeline now?" I asked. The room went still. Valerie blinked. "I'm sorry. The implementation timeline is complex. 18 months. 7 deployment phases. Dependencies between their legacy systems and our platform." Kept my voice calm. "Clinical. Who's taking ownership of that?" Marcus cleared his throat. "As I said, I'll be overseeing." "Overseeing isn't managing." He froze. Just for a second. Enough. Because the timeline, the real one, lived in my head. The dependencies. The client's non-negotiables. The fragile sequencing that made the deal real instead of theoretical. He had never asked. I watched realization flicker across his face. Not panic yet, but awareness. The sense that something was wrong, though he couldn't quite identify what. "I have the project documentation," Marcus said carefully. "You have the summary deck," I corrected. "Client-facing overview. High-level milestones. That's sufficient." "It's not." I looked at Valerie. The detailed implementation plan includes technical specifications for integration touchpoints, sequence deployment instructions tied to their production calendar, contingency protocols for 7 different failure modes, and dependencies mapped across 43 separate systems. Valerie looked confused. Marcus looked annoyed. Continued. "Olivia and I built that together over 4 months. It's not in the shared drive. It's in my personal files and her internal documentation." "Then you'll transfer those files before you leave," Marcus said. "I can't transfer what Olivia won't accept from anyone else." Silence. Because that was the truth he'd been too arrogant to see. Halcyon hadn't bought our platform. They'd bought trust. My trust. And you can't transfer that in an exit memo. Walking out clean. I handed in my badge. No speech. No threats. Just quiet footsteps down a hallway I'd outgrown. I deleted nothing. Took nothing that wasn't mine. Left my laptop on my desk, powered down, wiped to factory settings per company policy. But the knowledge that came with me. Every conversation with Olivia. Every technical requirement they'd flagged as critical. Every timeline constraint based on their board's expectations. Every relationship I'd built over 18 months. You can't delete that with IT protocols. I walked through the lobby, past the motivational posters and the glass trophy case displaying our industry awards, past the reception desk where Shania waved sadly. "I'm sorry, Natalie. Not your fault. Everyone knows you carried that deal." Smiled. Didn't respond. Pushed through the doors into afternoon sunlight. My car was 3 rows back in the garage. Climbed in. Sat there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel. My phone buzzed. Brennan. I'd ignored his texts from earlier. Now his name flashed on my screen again. Calling. Took a breath. Steadied myself. Then I answered. My phone rang before I reached my car. The client. "I heard you're gone," they said. "That doesn't make sense." I told the truth. Only. Carefully. They went silent. "Brennan," I said. "Hi. Natalie." His voice was tight. Controlled anger, barely restrained. What the hell just happened? I was let go. Restructuring. Restructuring. He repeated the word like it tasted bad. You just closed our deal 2 hours ago. I know. And they fired you. I leaned back against my car. The parking garage was mostly empty. My voice echoed slightly off the concrete. It's not about the deal, I said. It's politics. Politics. He exhaled sharply. Olivia is furious. She watched your manager take credit for 18 months of your work, and then you vanished. I didn't vanish. I was escorted out. Silence. Then, we signed a contract with you, Natalie. Not him. Legally, you signed with the company. Don't give me legal technicalities. You know what I mean. His frustration was clear now. You built this entire implementation plan. You understand our systems. You know Olivia's concerns. That Marcus guy showed up to 4 meetings and spent 3 of them on his phone. I didn't confirm or deny. But I didn't have to. Who's managing this now? Brennan asked. He says he will. Can he? I chose my words carefully. The high-level timeline is documented. That's not an answer. What I took with me. I didn't take files. I didn't take secrets. I took trust. The implementation plan Olivia and I built, I said quietly, covers a lot of ground that isn't in the standard contract documentation. Meaning Marcus has access to the overview. The phases, the milestones, the deliverables. What he doesn't have is the operational detail behind how those phases actually work. Brennan was quiet for a long moment. Can he figure it out? Eventually. With time and access to the engineering team. But not smoothly. Probably not. Another pause. Longer this time. Natalie, I need to be very clear with you. If this implementation fails, it's not just inconvenient for us. Our board approved this based on your plan. We're restructuring our entire supply chain around your timeline. If things fall apart. I understand. Do you? His voice sharpened. Because we trusted you. Personally. And now you're gone, and we're stuck with someone who can't answer basic questions about his own proposal. Closed my eyes. This was the part that hurt. Not losing my job. But knowing that my departure would damage people who'd believed in me. I didn't want this, I said quietly. I know. But here we are. The first deadline slipped. Then another. Inside the company, confusion spread. Meetings multiplied. My manager couldn't answer basic questions. 'Cause he never had. Started with something small. Week 2 of implementation. Olivia had emailed the shared project inbox with a technical question about API rate limiting during the initial data migration. Standard question. I'd answered it twice before during planning. But Marcus wasn't on those email threads. And the answer wasn't in his summary deck. He'd responded, "Our engineering team will follow up." Except the engineering team didn't know the specific context of Olivia's concern. They gave a generic answer about system capabilities, not a solution to her actual problem. Olivia escalated. Marcus scheduled a call, brought 2 engineers, spent 40 minutes talking around the issue without addressing it. Olivia ended the call frustrated. Then the real problem started. Phase 1 deployment was scheduled for week 6. But Phase 1 required 3 preparatory steps that I'd mapped with Olivia months earlier. Steps that weren't in Marcus's documentation. He missed them. By week 5, Halcyon's technical team realized critical infrastructure wasn't ready. They flagged it. Marcus scrambled to adjust. The deployment pushed to week 8. Then week 10. The second deadline slipped. The client called again. "If you're open," they said, "we'd rather work with you directly." I stared at the wall, heart racing. Said yes. Brennan didn't waste time on pleasantries. "This isn't working. Marcus doesn't know the plan. Your company's engineering team is responsive, but they're working blind. We're hitting walls every week. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this." He paused. "But you could." My pulse quickened. What are you suggesting? Work with us directly. Independent consultant. We'll pay you separately. You guide the implementation the way you originally designed it. I was quiet for a long moment, thinking through the implications. That would violate my non-compete. You didn't sign it. He was right. I'd walked out without signing the severance agreement. Without signing the NDA. The company had sent follow-up emails, increasingly urgent, asking me to return the signed documents. I'd ignored them all. Even without signing, I said carefully, there are ethical questions, legal risks. You wouldn't be competing. You'd be consulting on an existing contract that you created. Your contract is with my former employer. Our contract is failing because they can't deliver what you promised. Brennan's voice hardened. I have a board asking questions. I have a CFO who's wondering if we should pull out entirely. That got my attention. Pull out. Cut our losses. Terminate for non-performance. Panic. Leadership demanded updates. Emails resurfaced mine. Warnings. Documentation. All ignored. All timestamp. I heard about the emergency executive meeting from Kennedy. She'd texted me 3 days after Brennan's consulting offer. It's falling apart here. What is? Halcyon. Marcus can't deliver. Clients threatening to walk. Leadership is freaking out. I stared at my phone, conflicted. Part of me felt vindicated. They'd fired me, taken credit for my work, and now they were facing the consequences. But another part felt sick. Because this wasn't just about Marcus. The engineers working on implementation were good people. The company's reputation would suffer. And Halcyon would lose months of planning and investment. They're pulling your old emails, Kennedy continued. Every communication with the client. Every technical document you created. They're realizing how much you actually did. And they're panicking. Your warnings about timeline complexity, about technical dependencies, about the need for dedicated client relationship management. It's all there. Documented. Ignored. I thought about those emails. The ones I'd sent to Marcus flagging risks. The ones where I'd recommended involving engineering earlier. The ones suggesting we bring in additional resources. He'd dismissed every single one. Strategic recommendations, he'd called them. Not priorities. Now they were evidence. The boardroom turn. My name came up. Not as a problem. As a loss. Someone asked why I'd been fired. No one had a good answer. The board meeting happened on a Thursday. Kennedy wasn't there. She heard about it secondhand from an executive assistant, but the story spread fast. The board had demanded an explanation for the Halcyon situation. How had the company's biggest deal in years gone from celebration to crisis in under 3 months? Marcus had tried to blame engineering. Then the client for being difficult. Then scope creep. One board member, a woman named Patricia who'd been with the company for 15 years, had cut him off. Where's Natalie Cross? Silence. The woman who actually built this deal. Where is she? Marcus had apparently stammered something about restructuring. About strategic realignment. Patricia hadn't accepted it. You fired her the same day she closed a $4.2 million contract. I remember because it struck me as odd timing. Another board member jumped in. Was there a performance issue? No. Misconduct? No. Then why? No one had answered. Because the truth that Marcus had felt threatened by my competence wasn't something you could say in a board meeting. Patricia had pulled my file. Read my performance reviews. All excellent. Read my communications with Halcyon. All professional, thorough, strategic. Then she'd asked the killer question. Who approved this termination? The deal walks. The client formally withdrew. Publicly. The biggest win became the biggest failure. Halcyon's withdrawal notice arrived on a Monday morning. Brennan had called me first, courtesy heads up before he sent the official letter. We're terminating for non-performance, he said. Effective immediately. I'm sorry it came to this. Are you? His tone wasn't accusatory. Just curious. Yes, I wanted this to succeed. Even after how they treated you. Thought about that. The deal was good. The solution was right. It should have worked. It would have. With you. The official termination letter was professional but damning. It detailed missed deadlines, inadequate technical support, and failure to maintain the relationship standards established during the sales process. Named me specifically. The decision to proceed with Halcyon Industries was based substantially on our confidence in Natalie Cross's expertise and her commitment to hands-on implementation support. Her unexpected departure and the subsequent lack of capable replacement has fundamentally altered the viability of this engagement. The letter copied the executive team, the board, and legal. It went public within hours. Industry publications picked it up fast. $4.2 million deal collapses after key employee termination was the headline on TechDaily. My phone started ringing. Fall. My manager was transitioned, escorted, quietly. He tried to call me. I didn't answer. Marcus lasted 1 week after Halcyon's withdrawal. The board meeting that Friday was brief. Patricia had apparently led the charge, backed by 2 other members who'd reviewed the documentation trail. The decision was unanimous. Marcus was placed on administrative leave pending investigation into management practices. Corporate speak for "we're building a termination case." He was gone by Monday. Kennedy texted me the details. Security walked him out this morning. No goodbye email. No farewell meeting. Just gone. Felt nothing. No satisfaction. No vindication. Just a hollow acknowledgement that consequences had finally caught up. He called me that afternoon. 3 times. I let it go to voicemail. The message was rambling. Defensive. He claimed he'd been set up, that the board was scapegoating him, that I'd somehow orchestrated this entire situation. You poisoned them against me, he said. Turned the client against the company. You sabotaged this deal because you couldn't handle being let go. I deleted the message halfway through. Because the truth was simpler than his conspiracy theory. He'd fired the person who understood the work, then failed to do the work himself. Effect. The silence. The calls stopped. My calendar opened. The noise died. And for the first time in years my chest felt light. For 2 weeks I did nothing. I slept past 7 a.m. I went for long walks. I read books I'd been meaning to finish for months. I cooked actual meals instead of eating delivery at my desk. The absence of constant stress felt strange at first. Like I was forgetting something important. But slowly, the tension in my shoulders loosened. The knot in my stomach unclenched. I wasn't angry anymore. It was clear. I'd spent 3 years proving myself to people who didn't value me. Sacrificing my time, my health, my personal life, for what? Title. A salary that was good but not great. The approval of managers who saw me as useful but replaceable. I'd been so focused on succeeding within their system that I'd forgotten to question whether their system was worth it. Now, sitting in my apartment with sunlight streaming through the windows and no meetings scheduled, I understood something fundamental. I'd been measuring my worth by their standards. But their standards were broken. Marcus had taken credit for my work, and the executives had believed him because that's how their world worked. Politics over performance. Charisma over competence. I didn't want that world anymore. The rise. I consulted independently. Direct respect. Real money. No politics. People listened when I spoke. The offers started coming 3 weeks after Halcyon's withdrawal. First was Brennan. We still need what you were building, he said. We're starting over, but we want you leading it. Direct contract. No intermediaries. I negotiated aggressively. Double my previous salary, paid as project-based fees. Equity stake if the implementation succeeded. Full creative control over technical decisions. He agreed to everything. The second offer came from a competitor who'd read the TechDaily article. They wanted someone who could build complex client relationships in technical sales. The third offer was from a mid-sized consulting firm looking to expand their manufacturing practice. I took Brennan's offer and 2 others that didn't conflict. By month 2, I was earning more than I'd made in a year at my old company. By month 3, I had a waiting list of potential clients. The work was harder in some ways. More responsibility, more risk. But it was mine. When I solved a problem, my name stayed attached to it. When I built a strategy, nobody rebranded it as their vision. When clients thanked me, I didn't have to watch someone else accept the credit. Walking away whole. Weeks later, I passed the old building. Felt nothing. Because knowing your worth doesn't require revenge. Sometimes it just requires walking away and letting the truth finish the job. I was driving to a client meeting when I passed the office. The glass tower where I'd spent 3 years building someone else's reputation. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel nostalgia. Felt distance. Like looking at a place you used to live but don't quite remember living in. Kennedy had texted me updates occasionally. The company had hired a new sales director. They'd implemented new client relationship protocols. They'd reorganized the entire sales structure, apparently trying to prevent another halcyon situation. Marcus had landed somewhere else. Smaller company. Quieter role. I'd wished him no specific harm. But I hadn't wished him well either. Some people teach you what not to tolerate. Marcus had been an excellent teacher. As I drove past, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked different. Rested. Confident. Not because I'd gotten revenge, but because I'd gotten free. The truth about worth is simple. You either know it or you don't. For 3 years I'd let other people define mine. Now I defined it myself. And that, more than any severance package, any vindication, any public failure of the people who'd wronged me, that was the real victory. I drove on toward a meeting where people would listen when I spoke. Where my name would stay attached to my work. Where walking away had led me somewhere better.